Biology, evolution, and population genetics. In this unit, we will discuss topics that include adaptations. These are traits that organisms have to help them survive in their environments. Theories of evolution, how these organisms get adaptations over time. Natural selection and speciation, survival of the fittest, which could lead to different species being developed. Population genetics, the total genes that are present in a population. And genetic drift and patterns of macroevolution. How do these organisms change over long periods of time? What kinds of different species come about, and how do they evolve? Adaptations. Review. Characteristics of life. All living things, from a tiny amoeba to a massive redwood tree, share common characteristics. Doesn't matter whether it's plant, animal, or a single cell, they all have the same common fundamental characteristics of life. Review. Characteristics of life. Order. All living things have an orderly arrangement of molecules that form proteins that form cells. All living things have adaptations, some traits that help them survive to their environment. All living things respond to their environment. If the environment changes, they respond to it. There's regulation. As a part of responding to the environment, the organisms also regulate their own internal bodies or cells to keep everything running smoothly. Energy processing. All organisms must be able to obtain energy and use it. And all living things grow and develop. And then, of course, all living things have to reproduce in order to keep their species going. Last universal common ancestor, or LUCA. The most reasonable explanation that all life uses the exact same genetic code is that the code was in place before life branched out. Remember the 64 codons of mRNA? They all code for the same amino acids in every single organism. Whether it's bacteria or a whale or a tree, it doesn't matter, it's all the same. So the common features of life on Earth are so profound that all life must have evolved from a single common ancestor. That was LUCA, 3.5 to 3.8 billion years ago. Review. Universal genetic code. The universal genetic code is common to all life. All living things have DNA made up of the same 4 nucleotide bases, adenine, thymine, and cytosine and guanine. All living things use RNA, which is made up of the same 4 nucleotide bases, adenine and uracil, cytosine and guanine. The 64 codons of this RNA code for the same 20 amino acids. Evolution. Evolution is the process by which modern organisms have descended from ancient organisms over time. Time is the critical element in seeing how life could have developed from simple chemicals to the complex world we see around us today. Take a look here at the clock on the right. It shows the relative amounts of time between each major event taking place. Think about the formation of the Earth happening 12 hours ago, which of course we know is a huge amount of time. So, in the first 2 hours out of the 12, the Earth was lifeless. Then come along the first forms of life, the prokaryotes, and it was just them for over half of the time that the Earth has been around. And then around 8 o'clock, the eukaryotes come, and animals don't show up until 10:30. So just the last hour and a half out of the 12 hours that the Earth has been around, animals have been around. So even dinosaurs are relatively recent in the whole time history of the Earth. Review. Time. Earth is approximately 4.6 billion years old. Our first records from human history are about 10,000 years old. The process of developing life started about 400,000 times further back in time than that. So on our timeline here, human history is at the very, very tip of this timeline, all the way on the right. Just a little blip in the whole timeline. And if we go back to the dinosaurs, that's not too much further back than where we are right now. That's a very, very small amount of time. Think back to the earliest human records or even the building of the Egyptian pyramids. You can't even see that on this timeline. So this timeline just shows that there are massive, massive amounts of time for evolution to happen, for life to change. Why evolve? The Earth is a dynamic, continuously changing environment. We see it in our lifetimes. We see floods, we see fires, we see landscapes being shaped. So groups of living things must adapt, adjusting to these changes in order to survive and pass on their genes to their offspring. Adaptations. An adaptation is a trait, structure, function, or behavior that makes a living organism better able to survive and reproduce in its environment. An example we have here is a koala that has 2 thumbs on each hand, which enables it to get a better grip when climbing the trees to get those eucalyptus leaves, and also to hold a comb here to brush its hair. Competition. Organisms that share an environment compete with each other to obtain necessities, like water, food, and living space. An organism with an adaptation specific to its environment that helps it obtain resources has a better chance of survival and reproduction than the other organisms in its environment. So in the case of lions, it's better for them to have more muscles and sharper teeth and sharper claws to outdo their competitors, such as hyenas, leopards, or other lions even. And this happens at the bacterial level as well. Bacteria are constantly evolving new adaptations to try and outcompete other bacteria. Some bacteria will make toxins or antibiotics to kill off other bacteria. And that's why we often smell the odor on decaying animals, because bacteria are claiming it for themselves and trying to ward away other possible competitors. Evolution leads to diversity. A species is a group of individuals that can actually or potentially interbreed, producing viable offspring. It is estimated that there are 8.7 million species of organisms currently living on Earth. So for example, a male lion can cross with a female lion, and they have lion cubs. The lion cubs will be able to have their own lion cubs when they get older. So that's a key thing about species here, is that when a species reproduces, their young must also be able to reproduce one day. In the case of a horse and a donkey, they are closely related species, but they are different. They're not the same species. So they can interbreed, but their offspring is sterile. Because a mule cannot have offspring of its own, that means that the horse and the donkey are not the same species.